Hey, how you doing? This is RJ. Today I'm going to talk to you about iron sights. Now, today originally I was going to talk to you about war comics because I've been going through my old stuff and looking at things like Sergeant Rock and the Unknown Soldier, stuff like the Howling Commandos, the Fighting Marines, GI Combat, all that good stuff. But I didn't realize that it was going to be the end of the month this quick. I didn't realize it was going to be the first this quick. And since it's the first, Iron Sight's Indiegogo campaign is up. And I really wanted to talk about this as soon as it started up. So, right off the bat, I'm going to tell you that I'm not really sure whether or not I'm going to back this. Because I've been flipping back and forth, looking at what it is and what it isn't. But I want to take a look at it a little bit critically, I'm not going to fawn over it like I'm sure some people might. There are some good things and some bad things here. I'm going to already assume that it's going to be a good Indiegogo campaign. You know, Richard Meyer knows how to run a good Indiegogo campaign. He knows how to get the word out there. That's just assumed. That's going to happen. You don't have to give any kind of play-by-play on that. And it's only going to be a short Indiegogo campaign. I think it's 10 days. So if you want to go take a look at Iron Sights, you're going to have to do so really quickly. So originally, when I had seen Iron Sights, I was looking at the art and just at the little bit of art that I could scrape together that Richard Meyer has allowed out there. And as I looked at it, I was saying to myself, I really don't know about this. It doesn't look exactly as good as I had hoped it would be. But as for the art, the stuff that you see, the stuff that I'm showing you on the screen, I'm not entirely sure how much of it is going to be in the book. There's a lot of rough stuff here, and Richard Meyer had enough money from his Patreon, and he had the early stuff that was written for the book, that was drawn for the book, redone. So some of this stuff may not even be in the book. Some of this stuff may simply be stuff that was redone, stuff that was just rough sketched. So as for the art, I'm not entirely sure how much of what you're looking at is actually going to make it into the book. But there's some really, really good stuff. There's some fan art here too. There's a couple of pages that I don't know if they're actually going to be in the book or if they're just going to be fan art. You can tell the difference between what is actually a page and what is fan art. It's pretty simple there. But of the pages themselves, there are some that look really spectacular. There are some that look really, really nice, and there are some that look pretty amateurish, that look like they're a indie book, and it's serviceable for an indie book, you know, kind of. But then you got other pages where it looks like a really good, almost Frank Millerish kind of page, and those are the pages where you have really old style background, and it really works well with this art. If that's the entire book, it looks really, really good. The way that they do the background for this is really nice. If you see the different shade tones in some of these pictures, and some of them just have blank backgrounds, and hopefully they're only rough sketches with no color, no tones in them at all. But the way that the good pages work with these tones in them is, it's just simple black and white. And there are some pages here that he was originally going to do it in monochrome, which are the brownish pages, but he's changed that since then to put it back to black and white, which is what was originally it was in. And black and white really, really takes these changes in background tone and uses them to their full extent, because you can make effects with these things that are really nice. You got some pictures where, there's lighter shade where the gun's going off and there is a lot of movement, and you can see it in the background noise. Basically, it looks like that's there. Also, the darker panels where you can tell the person is trying to hide things like this really, really work with the black and white. I like it. Normally, I'm not the biggest fan of black and white, but it works with this. And there are some panels within these good pages also with no background. And I know that you should normally have a good background, but there's ones where you focus directly on the character himself and just on the character, nothing else. That's where, as Richard would normally say, your character looks like a boss, right? That's him discarding a gun and picking out a new one. These are the kinds of things that really work, again, with no background. So I was flipping and flopping back and forth in the art. It depends on how much of this art is actually rough sketch and how much is getting into the book. And I don't think we're going to see that until perhaps he posts more on the Indiegogo campaign, because as I'm recording this, I'm actually recording this a day before the campaign starts because I want to get a jump on this. I only have the stuff available for what has been put out there so far. I don't have the actual Indiegogo campaign. I'm planning to put this up as soon as the campaign starts, however. So I might be doing a second video on this more towards the end, but I wanted to get word out today about this just because it's another great campaign, and I'm trying to get on top of these great campaigns so we can get word out about them. Now, as I said, I was kind of originally a little bit hesitant to the art because it looked really rough to me, and it looked like something that it just didn't appeal to me whatsoever. But then a few nights ago, I was in one of the Diversity in Comics live streams, which I frequent, and I asked a couple of questions about Iron Sights directly about the story itself, and Richard was kind enough to answer two of my questions about the story itself, which I'll have to thank him for that. I tip my hat to Richard for answering my questions. Thank you very much. But he gave the story for the basic story for what Iron Sights is, which I'll give you in 1 second. But when he talked about what the actual story was, it seemed to explain the art very well, the minimalistic style of it, and it actually sort of crystallized in my mind why he would use this kind of style of art, because it's a very basic story and it works well with this art. I don't know if he had a choice when he actually picked out this artist, or if he picked him out specifically because of the way he works, and it looked to him like it would work well with the story. But to me, it does look like it would work well with this kind of story, because it's not a superhero story. So to go over what the story is basically, because he did go over it in the live stream in fairly good detail as well. So Richard is ex-military, and he has friends who are ex-military, and he based this story on a job one of his friends had in real life. So one of his friends, who was a sniper in the military, had gotten out and then wanted to get back in, but was having trouble getting back into the military, and so he had to take a job. He had to take a job to be basically a guard, a babysitter for these guys down near the U.S.-Mexico border, almost right on the border. And I think he talked about them digging a trench for a pipeline or some such thing. So he's basically guarding these guys. He's Overwatch for these guys. And it's just a civilian capacity, you know, probably in the book is just a private contractor. So Richard started thinking to himself, he said, what in the world do these guys need a sniper for? Why do they need him watching over them? What possibly could go wrong at this border station where they're working that could need someone to guard them like that? And his mind started to work on this problem, and he thought about what could go wrong, and what we have as a result is Iron Sights. Iron Sights is his imagination going wild about what could go wrong in this situation. So that's the original backing of what actually happened to Richard, and it's the backstory basically of this story of Iron Sights. So what goes wrong in the story? Well, what goes wrong is you have this sniper, he's guarding these guys right off of the U.S.-Mexico border. And he sees something going on right across the border. And from the pages that I'm looking at, it's most probably a drug cartel, some other kind of mobsters right across the border who are doing something illegal. And this fella's instincts kick in, and he shoots two of these guys right across the border. And that just starts a chain of events that spirals downwards and downwards for this fella, because, of course, things go wrong really quickly. Right off the bat, he's already created an international incident by shooting someone across a border. And besides that, the drug cartel fellas send people after him. And I think in the course of them trying to kill him, his wife gets shot, and things just go downward and downward for this guy. And, of course, the name of the book is Iron Sights, which, if you know anything about long arms, it's basically the two sights for your gun that line up in the middle and the end of the barrel when you shoot not using a scope. So that's what Iron Sights is. It's basically a reference to his sniper weapon. So that's the basic story. And when he explained the basic story, I was right on board, because it sounds like a really good story. Richard has some really good story ideas, and this is one of them. So I started doing my research into Iron Sights a little more to get more of the art. And again, I started flipping back to the I don't know, maybe not sure whether I'm going to get this. And it was for a really strange reason. I'm sure most people would probably think of it as a really strange reason. It's not for me, but it's because there's a lot of cursing in these pages, which is funny, because Richard himself, he doesn't curse a lot, and he purposefully doesn't curse a lot. And when he finds this in books, he always calls it forced cursing, and he calls it out. He says, you don't need this in a book. Why are you putting this in there? And I agree with him. I mean, there's no reason for these things to be in there. We all probably grew up on comic books that didn't have any kind of language like this in them, and what reason there was to have this in the book kind of threw me. I'm not entirely sure why he would do that. I know that you might want to make it realistic, but again, I'm thinking back to my war comics, and they were pretty realistic. For me anyways, for a comic reader, you can make them realistic. Again, thinking about when I was growing up, you got war comics, you got war movies, you got all of these things and television shows. You can do plenty of drama, and you don't need that. When he calls it out in other books, I'm rightly agreeing with him, because there's really no need for it. And it kind of gets rid of some of your potential customers right there, because there's an age limit where, I got nephews who, if I got things in a book that I don't want them to see, I don't know if I'm going to read that book. I don't know if I'm going to buy that book, because they're going to be into my comic collection soon enough. But when you look at it, originally, I don't know if Iron Sights was supposed to come out to the general public. It was supposed to come out to people, specifically people on his Patreon who had given him money to develop original content. So he may have had a customer base in mind when he originally wrote it that was very specific, and not thinking about a customer base beyond that. That could be it, and they could have asked for more reality in it. But again, I don't know whether or not these early pages are going to be redone completely for dialogue or not, because listening to Richard, and since I think it was October of last year was the first time I had heard it, and he had given a video about putting in his lettering for the book. He has changed some of it since. I don't know how much of this is going to actually, for the lettering, get into the book or not. He may have changed it in order to appeal to a wider audience. He may not have. But that was one of those things. I'm looking at the story going, it kind of, for me anyways, it hinders the story instead of help the story. It really doesn't need to be there. I like the way that the story interacts with the art when I actually get to see some of it here, and I know that they talk in a realistic kind of way. But again, you're losing some of your potential audience, I would say, if he's trying to get this book out to as many people as possible. So that's the story. That's the art. That's my little bit of criticism on it so far. However, whatever criticism I have, when I get to the really good pages and I look at them and I say, that just nails it. I'm hoping all of these pages look like these good pages and just tell the story. The ones, again, I'm really a big advocate for stories that are told with little to no dialogue. And the pages that I like in here would have no dialogue at all anyways. So originally, I had thought that this was going to look like a war comic. I thought that this was going to look like an older comic with a focus on the guy as a soldier. But it sort of looks to me like, and I think Richard has mentioned this a couple of times too as well, it looks like a cross between the first Rambo movie and No Country for Old Men. You take those two movies and you shove them together, and I think that's what you got here. He had mentioned a bunch of other sources where he said was a big influence for him on this book, but for me, in my mind, that's all that needs to be connected for the story for this book. Rambo plus No Country for Old Men. And again, this is me flipping and flopping back and forth whether I'm going to buy it or not, because really love Rambo. Grew up with that, watched it at the drive-in when I was pretty young. It was great. I really didn't like No Country for Old Men. It was well done. I'll give it that. But again, as I say in a lot of my videos, I'm a superhero guy. I need a hero. So I'm looking for a hero in this book. And usually, when I'm going back to my old war comics, whether or not SJWs want to admit it, soldiers are heroes. That's why war comics work for comics, because soldiers are heroes. And so I'm looking for a hero in my book, even when it's a book about a soldier, an ex-soldier, still looking for a hero. I don't like anti-hero books. I don't like books that just tell a story and have no purpose to them and have no hero. It doesn't work for me. I really don't like them. So I'm hoping that this guy, who is the main character of this book, again, I don't even know his name because I've never actually run across that, but hoping that this guy is an actual hero. I'm hoping that he is heroic, and I don't think that Richard would write a comic without having a hero in it, and that's my assumption, though. So I hope that this is a book about a hero. All right, so that's my take on Iron Sights. So far, anyways. I might give another take on it later on, but it's only a 10-day Indiegogo campaign. So if you like the art, if you like the story, go check it out. There might be a little bit more art on the page. I'm sure that Richard would put more art on the page than I have for you right here, because again, I'm doing this the day before he actually sets up this account. And as always, I'm trying to be fair, I'm trying to be balanced here. I'm not going to gush over anything. I think that this has some sort of indie qualities that really could be freshened up and really could be used better. But at the very least, hopefully, this video has given you some idea of whether or not you want to buy it. And that's what my videos about these Indiegogo campaigns are for. They're for your information, to get you over there to take a look at these things, see if you want to buy them or not. And I'll probably have more of these because Red Rooster is coming up as well, and I'm going to be definitely doing one of those, hopefully on the first day that it comes out as well. Alright, so if this video has been helpful to you at all, then hit like, hit subscribe, share the link. That will be helpful not only to me but to Richard certainly as well, to get the word out that this Indiegogo campaign has started, and it's only for 10 days. So if you share this video and let as many people know as possible, that would be great. And on that topic too, I want to thank a couple of people for sharing my videos on their Twitter feed. I got Nebraska Dave, I got Elder Ross, and Inverse Hyperbolic Tangent. Those three that have been great on their Twitter to share my links, and it's really shot up the number count of my last video. I think I got more hits on my last video in 10 hours than I did on any of my previous videos at all. So, that's really helpful. That's great to get the word out there. I'd like to thank those people, and thank you in advance if you're going to share this link. That's great. Helps everybody out, helps comics, helps Comicsgate, and that's what we need. So I hopefully will do my War Comics video soon enough as well, and maybe even tomorrow. It all depends on how much time I got to do these things. Until then, I'll see you later. Bye.